Welcome to BofC Live, the daily video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. BofC Live highlights the companies, brands, people, and trends driving the global cannabis sector. Learn more at businessofcannabis.ca. Today's guest is Jeff Goldenberg. He's the founder of Second and Goal Ventures, and they just launched a brand with NFL legend Marshawn Lynch. Jeff Goldenberg, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When last we talked, you talked about building cannabis brands and sort of how working back from the consumer and thinking about consumer needs, desires, need states, all those things. And then I see Jeff Goldenberg is working with Marshawn Lynch on a blunt brand in California. How did Jeff Goldenberg connect with Marshawn Lynch, aka Beast Mode?
Beast Mode. Yeah, so three Super Bowls ago, right before the Super Bowl, a good friend of mine, Greg, who I work with, and messaged me and says, how would you like to work on a weed brand with Marshawn Lynch? And I believe I answered that it was the reason I was put on this earth. 2 weeks later, Beast Mode's at my office in Toronto, spends a lot of time in Toronto, and so we've got the Hennessy and we got the Skittles, we got everything laid out, and we show him what our ideas are for a cannabis brand, and he loved it. And from there, it took a very, 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 very long time, 2 and a bit years, to get all the pieces in place, get his career stable enough, get the legal framework in place. We finally, after all that time, launched it. But it was a great 2 years. A couple weeks after the meeting, I volunteered at his kids camp in Ottawa, where he teaches kids how to play football. And I had my own little cabin of kids that we ran around, did crazy stuff, and it was really good. And over that time, we really got to know each other and trust each other. Corey Way too, who's creative director extraordinaire. Him and Marshawn would work pretty hands-on the branding and stuff. So yeah, it was a crazy 2 years, but that's how it all started, and we just launched it right before this Super Bowl, and it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I want to talk about it because there's been no shortage of let's say, high-profile cannabis brands, right? Whether it's take your pick. That said, Marshawn Lynch, I think, is unique in that he is a different kind of celebrity. I mean, he's an athlete for sure, but has this sort of bigger than life personality, never shy in what he says and does. How do you work that into sort of a brand positioning around or with Marshawn?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and hopefully I can answer it well. The first thing I want to say is that, at the end of the day, we don't think about ourselves as a celebrity brand. We want Dodi to be its own thing, and while it'll mirror and reflect all the things that make Marshawn's fans love him, it needs to stand on its own feet, and it needs to just be the best brand and not just his brand. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you're thinking about tying a brand to a celebrity, really what you're looking to do is take the attributes of the celebrity and basically superimpose it onto the brand. And when you think about all the things that Marshawn stands for, it was a high bar that we had for the brand, where it's got to represent sort of what he does, and by saying less and not more, which is tricky. I think what makes this different is that sports and cannabis have not come together yet. And that's because there's always been a massive cost on athletes to associate with cannabis. The drug program in the NFL is a 4-year program that's basically like you're almost on like jail probation. Other sponsors turn and run. The league frowns on it. There's always been a big cost to associating yourself with cannabis and sports. And Marshawn, over the years, has been willing to pay that price. He's always been associated with it. And because of that, he holds a place in sports and authenticity to the brand that I think is unmatched amongst anyone else that we could work with. Like LeBron James would probably sell a lot of weed because he's got like a platform that sort of supersedes sports, but at the same time, would it be authentic? Like, I'd be like, "Ooh, I didn't know you smoked." So it's a very interesting match of trying to take everything that's great about Marshawn and put it into Dodi, try to be a brand on its own, where even if you didn't know Marshawn or know that he was associated with it, you might fall in love with it anyway. And then really working on this area of bringing sports culture and cannabis culture together, really for the first time. There's been some jabs in the past, and there's been some people who have like opened the doors, but I think no one at Marshawn's sort of brand and global level, and the fact that he's still an active spokesperson for Subway and Doritos and all the stuff he's doing, makes it quite a unique situation. It makes it a lot of fun, but it also brings with it some challenges that are quite unique.
Do you think all those things that you said, with stigma coming down, with sports leagues being more permissive, I guess, with athletes either speaking out from an advocacy perspective or launching their own brand perspective, and not just because many have said, oh, it's CBD, it's CBD. This is clearly not that. Like, do you think we'll see more, or do you think there will still be this sort of stigma backlash, except for the brave and those that are really authentic to it?
So I think the timeline and the timing is crazy right now, because there's a lot of things happening at the same time. They call it the perfect storm. The leagues are stopping their testing programs and their suspensions and stuff, so it's changing there. The UN has recently declassified it. The MORE Act in the States is gaining some ground, and a Democratic government promises to maybe start to bring the federal and state laws a little closer together. The investment market is heating up. So I think the time is right. And what I said to the team the night before we launched it is that I think in 10 years, you'll see cannabis advertising and sports together when it's more acceptable. And what I said to the team is, if they ever do like a documentary on how cannabis and sports came together, I'd like this project to be sort of the one that took it from little pockets here and there and really exploded it to the mainstream, because I think a lot of people like sports and weed. I think a lot of people like smoking weed and watching sports. It's just a guess. But if it's true, I kind of want to speak to them in ways that they haven't been spoken to before.
Yeah, I'd like to see that round table with like Ross Bigliotti and Marshawn Lynch just hanging around like on a pre-Super Bowl show.
Yeah, we could invite Al Harrington. We could invite Ricky Williams. Mike Tyson could pop by for a minute. Sean Kemp out in Seattle. Gary Payton a little bit. But that would be a fun party. We should do that. Snoop could come by too.
Let's get on that.
Marshawn are good friends. They're both really proud of themselves because they're the only two people to have ever smoked weed on Forbes. Marshawn actually thought he was first, and then found out that Snoop did it a couple months before. But that'd be a good dinner party. But I just think, he's a superstar athlete. He's known globally. He has a brand separate from himself already. He's less than a year removed from the league and could play tomorrow if he needed to. He's a celebrity, and that like celebrities loving him. Yeah. So it's a very unique situation, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else.
Yeah, and I do like Marshawn Lynch, and I like him for all the things that he does and did, but I especially love the thing that he didn't do, which was get the ball in the Super Bowl when they had it on the 1 yard line against my Patriots. And I don't think he liked that he didn't get the ball either. It may have cost him the game, and perhaps it did. And my Patriots won. But kudos to you, and kudos to Marshawn Lynch, because I think it's really all the things you said, just bang on. And when we get out to we have to go to California to get it, correct? But maybe someday we'll get it in a cannabis store in downtown Toronto.
Well, we have a very aggressive expansion plan. We're starting in Oakland because this brand is for Oakland. We want to export Oakland weed and Oakland blunts to the rest of the world, instead of like being a local brand that localizes itself to different markets. It was a big aha moment actually over the holidays this year. It was like Kentucky bourbon. They don't try to become Buffalo bourbon and Toronto bourbon. They're always, so that's the connection I want to make between Oakland and the cannabis, because Oakland has such a rich history and tradition in sports, music, culture, cannabis, everything.
Well, it's
And
home of Oaksterdam.
that's right. And what Marshawn says almost becomes Oakland culture in real time. And that's sort of the core of what we're trying to do. Create like a provenance of cannabis to Oakland that has been, decades in the making, and have, the basically the mayor of Oakland to be our spokesperson. But no, we'd like to be in Seattle. We'd like to be in Vegas, where the Raiders moved. We'd eventually like to be in New York, because he started in Buffalo. We'd love to be in Toronto and Canada, and we thought about the branding in ways that would potentially allow that to happen. Then ultimately, anywhere there's football and cannabis, and there's a Venn diagram of those two coming together, we'd like to be there. We have plans on a lot of new products and product formats and different categories, so that's exciting. We've got some merchandise and accessories that we're launching that's going to be really cool. So yeah, it's a very exciting and busy project, and I'm glad I was able to come and chat with you about it today.
Well, I appreciate it. I really love it, and I think you and the team really thoughtful in sort of how you approach things, how you roll things out, and are generally bang on to where I think sort of good sort of market development, good product development, good ideas, good brands come from. So kudos to you, and we'll connect with you down the road when we.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks so much. We'll speak to you soon, Jeff. Thanks.
DodiBlunts.com. Go get you some of that Dodi.
I'll put that in. I'll put that up on the website when it's done. Our work is made possible with the ongoing support of our official partners, including Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, and Torque & Mains.